News Talk 1340 KROC AM Rochester today. Luke Loney alongside James Raby and Matt McKay from Family Service Rochester. He's a counselor there.
Matt, it's wonderful to talk to you again. We've had you on the air on Y105 FM talking about a lot of different things at Family Service Rochester for our Mental Health Minute. But today, I want to talk about children when they get separated from their parents and what that does. And I know you can't ask specifics because every kid's different, right?
Yep, that's correct.
What can you tell us as a very basic idea of a child and parent separation?
In regards to child separation, what I would say is this, is that anytime that a child is separated from a parent or vice versa is something that's really against their own will at times or against due to whatever reasons through courts or visitations and so forth.
So not like when they go visit grandma or something like that.
No.
Okay.
So it's most of the time what I would define as something that's out of their own control in regards to the outcome.
Okay. And how do kids react to it?
Well, most kids that I worked with in the past in regards to separation, there's a lot of grief and loss process. Part of it is they don't understand what's going on. And so as a therapist, our role is trying to normalize it as much as possible, yet also trying to process and define what's going on for the child.
A kid comes to you for counseling, for a separation. How are they acting?
I would say most times kids, how they will react is that either they're very quiet or they will act out behaviorally. So you'll see a lot of acting out behaviors like hitting, talking back, aggressive communication styles. And the other ones too is that when they don't talk, it's more around the anxieties of it. So it's something that you can tell that something's going on, yet non-verbally you'll see some of the stuff. And some of the things that you may see is lack of sleep, lack of appetite, and so forth.
Okay. I've heard many times people tell kids, hey, use your words. Is that what they're saying when they talk about a kid that's violent? He doesn't know or she doesn't know how to express what they're feeling, so they do the only thing they know how to do?
Yeah, they will tend to default to what they know. So how they process stuff is basically through actions because that's all they know. And so part of our role, too, and also what we try to teach parents is how do you, instead of being reactive, how do you be proactive in regards to when kids do act out. So if you know the behavioral piece of it of the child, how do you intervene sooner rather than later? And if the sooner that you can intervene, that you see any signs of anxiety, then the sooner the better to help them re-regulate. And it's not really a good learning process if they're dysregulated, is because they're not going to take anything. So that's why we try to teach proactive parenting versus reactive parenting.
Is the time the child and the parent are separated, does it make it worse for them if they're way longer or shorter? Or
I think time is probably hard to measure. I think obviously the longer it is, the more challenging it is for the child. And a part of the reason why it's challenging is because they just don't know what's going on the other end. And so when you see these types of situations, they just don't know how to process. Like, I know somebody's there, but I can't see them. That's somebody I love. And so it's hard to kind of figure out how to create some sense in this world. And the parent's job is to help kids to journey into the world. And when they're not there, it's almost like you're in this world by yourself and you don't know who to turn to.
If a kid is removed from the parent's home because of something violent happening in the home or because the parent has to go to jail or whatever, does the setting they go to make a difference?
I don't think a setting is that important. As long as that they have someone that's a safe person to talk to. And that's the thing too, is that it could be a therapist, it could be a school counselor, it could be a teacher, a custodian, it could be a pastor or somebody like a neighbor. It's anybody that they can go to that's considered safe so that they can process it. So it doesn't have to be a clinician. It's just, again, how do we deal with this and how do we make sense of the world for the child?
Are there long-term effects?
I think the long-term effects of some of the separation or in regards to any type of disrupted attachment, I would say the long-term I tend to see is more around depression, anxiety, PTSD, depending on the traumatic event. The other thing that I do see is it's more around how do they create relationships in the future. And they tend to more likely have a harder time to trust anybody just due to how the separation started. And so adults are supposed to be safe people and someone that I can go to. But when things like this happen, they don't trust anyone. So what we try to do is how do we create healthy relationships, and how do you communicate that with other people. So,
And when you got someone that's, say, 4 or 5, is there a way to do that?
well, part of it is just that it's just how they interact with other kids. And so I think in the school settings, they can teach, especially school social workers or school counselors, they can teach them friendship groups, those types of things. And there's a right way and there's a wrong way to create friends. And that's part of the process that a lot of good schools do, is how do I create relationships that can be long lasting, instead of just creating a relationship just to create a relationship.
Our public schools, do they have the staff and the ability to spend time doing this with kids?
Well, I think that's the problem too, is that there's not enough people in the world to provide what we're looking for and support for kids. I have to say, a lot of the schools, especially in this area that I know of, they do have the knowledge behind it. So I know a lot of the schools in this area is a trauma-informed school. And so it's not looking at the behaviors, it's looking more around what's going on behind the behaviors, so that we don't inadvertently trigger a child to go into a behavioral blowout.
Okay. When I lived in Idaho, I knew a young woman at church. We celebrated a reunification with her mom and dad. Even though they all knew each other, they went to the same church and everything like that, the woman had reached a point where she could connect with them. And it sprung from something that happened way early with her birth mom, where she just couldn't attach to people.
I think as they get older, it's harder to attach to the person. And so I know I work a lot with adoption cases, and when they go back to do birth parent search, they're in limbo of who do I love, my adoptive parents or my biological parents. And yet I think what parents can do in regards to that type of situation is, how do I support the child through the journey in regards to how to create a relationship if that's what the child wants. And at the same time, how do you honor the child's story and their understanding of what they really want? And that's the part, is how do you have that conversation as adoptive parents or anything in regards to teachers or any adult.
So there's no one blanket answer for any of it, sounds like.
I wish there was. And I think every kid deals with traumatic events or stress or anxiety differently. And what we can do is how to help them to normalize the process than anything else.
I had a feeling it was going to be more complicated than the world makes it sound like. That is Matt McKay from Family Service Rochester. News Talk 1340, KROC AM News is next.